So after I saw all this stuff about the gag orders, I thought, that's really weird. Because if you remember, I told you that I had a source who was actually on the ground the day that Charlie was shot, somebody who was in law enforcement.
Really?
And I basically knew a lot of the things before it ever hit the news. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been so outspoken about this, because it hasn't made any sense at all. Well, I got to thinking, I remember my source telling me something about how they were trying to keep everybody very tight-lipped. And so I went back through our messages and I found this. So on September 27th, my source said, I can't talk about it yet. Admin is on high alert about leaks. Blank advised anyone leaking information about this case would receive heavy reprimand. And I said, I'm convinced this was a hit, dude. This Tyler Patsy thing stinks to high heaven. So everyone is being very tight-lipped. Oh, for sure, bro. Once I got on scene, I could tell something was very wrong. He verified with UVU officers at UVU campus, that Charlie's team wouldn't coordinate with them regarding security, which I thought was really weird. Now, I don't know the exact protocol with this. I don't know if this is a normal thing. Is it not weird that the guest security wouldn't coordinate with the officers on campus? Like, is it not weird that they wouldn't coordinate with local officers? Is that just a normal thing? I don't know. But I just thought it was really weird.
So this guy, Ian at Stir, you see it. He says there's proof that Charlie Kirk security told local law enforcement that they didn't need to work with them, and that over a month ago, local law enforcement officers and everyone involved were already being told to stay quiet. That's a month before these official gag orders happened. So it's about a fair trial for Tyler. So just to let you know, there's a huge gag order. One of the most unprecedented gag orders in history is being put on the Charlie Kirk case. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
By a suspect judge. So I mean, how many more things can a certain powerful entity do behind the scenes to conspire before we get to call it a conspiracy? How many? So let's watch this guy. He's got a great so he actually had some cops that were on the ground there, and listen to what he says.
Now, truth be told, this part you've probably already seen. It happened yesterday. However, I can guarantee you didn't see the part that follows.
This is bad. This is real bad. Even mainstream media is calling this one of the most secretive trials in history. The judge is making everything secret with gag orders, including the police reports and 3,000 witnesses, associates, or anyone that knew Charlie Kirk. They're saying effectively any talk show host that knew him or talked to him was under gag order.
Sorry, guys. Been sick a couple days and saw this yesterday, but I wanted to verify that it was actually real because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But alas, it's real. Watch this.
There is a substantial amount of discovery in this case, Your Honor. It's voluminous, to say the least.
His lawyers entered their formal appearance and declined to waive his right to a preliminary hearing. Judge Tony Graff has issued a gag order preventing anyone associated with the case from talking about it. It's to avoid pretrial publicity, already a big problem. A case with massive media exposure involving a high-profile figure like Charlie Kirk, but the judge wants to ensure a fairer trial for.
This is real. Here are the actual gag orders. You can read them right here. Just hold down and screenshot. So after I saw all this stuff about the gag orders, I thought, that's really weird. Because if you remember, I told you that I had a source who was actually on the ground the day that Charlie was shot, somebody who was in law enforcement.
Really?
And I basically knew a lot of the things before it ever hit the news. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been so outspoken about this, because it hasn't made any sense at all. Well, I got to thinking, I remember my source telling me something about how they were trying to keep everybody very tight-lipped. And so I went back through our messages and I found this. So on September 27th, my source said, I can't talk about it yet. Admin is on high alert about leaks. Blank advised anyone leaking information about this case would receive heavy reprimand. And I said, I'm convinced this was a hit, dude. This Tyler Patsy thing stinks to high heaven. So everyone is being very tight-lipped. Oh, for sure, bro. Once I got on scene, I could tell something was very wrong. And I was thinking about our conversation. I was thinking about a couple of other things he was talking about. And I remembered that one of the things he was also talking about was the fact that he verified with UVU officers at UVU campus, that Charlie's team wouldn't coordinate with them regarding security, which I thought was really weird. Now, I don't know the exact protocol with this. I don't know if this is a normal thing. Is it not weird that the guest security wouldn't coordinate with the officers on campus? Like, is it not weird that they wouldn't coordinate with local officers? Is that just a normal thing? I don't know. But I just thought it was really weird. All the people who have called people like me crazy for saying that there's far more to this than just what they're telling us. It might be time to start considering that maybe you're wrong, because I'll tell you what, if you want to convince people that there's nothing weird going on with this assassination, if you want to convince them that there are no conspiracy theories and that it really is just what you're telling them,
just don't fit.
you don't put gag orders on every single person that was involved in it, including all 3,000 of the attendees. You just don't do that.
A little boy, only 4 years old, vanished from his family's property in broad daylight while
once again, I'll tell
playing
you,
just meters
there's
away
definitely
from his
more to this
grandmother's
assassination
house.
than we think.
No
We just
screams,
witnessed
no sounds,
our
no
modern day
footprints leading
JFK.
away, just gone.
But hey, I'm just a
And what
conspiracy
happened
theorist.
next raised even more questions. Why did it take 3 whole hours before anyone called the police? Why did search teams find only one single footprint and then nothing? And the grandmother's behavior, calm, almost too calm. Some people say it was shock, others, they're convinced there's something darker hiding beneath that silence. But here's the part that'll keep you up tonight. After hundreds of volunteers, police dogs, helicopters, and days of searching the vast Australian outback, not a single trace of that little boy was ever found. So what really happened to Gus Lamont that afternoon? Stick around, because once you hear the timeline, the family dynamics, and the strange inconsistencies in this case, you'll start to wonder if the truth was right there on that farm all along. So let's rewind for a second. It's September 27, 2025. A warm, windy afternoon on a family property near Yunta, a small, isolated town in South Australia. 4-year-old Gus Lamont was playing outside his grandmother's house. Just a little kid, happy, curious, covered in red dirt, doing what kids do best. Inside, his grandmother Shannon was watching over him, or at least that's what everyone thought. Around 5 p.m., she looks outside and realizes Gus isn't there anymore. No sound, no movement, just an empty yard and the sound of wind blowing through the dry grass. Now here, where things get strange and honestly a bit uncomfortable. Because instead of calling the police immediately, 3 hours pass. Yeah, 3 whole hours. And in a disappearance like this, every minute counts. By the time police finally arrived, the sun had already dipped behind the horizon. The temperature started to drop fast and the search began in total darkness. But what they found or didn't find would confuse investigators for months. One small footprint. No trail. No scent for the dogs to follow. Nothing else. Pause. And when you start hearing how the family reacted and how their stories started to slightly shift, you'll understand why people can't stop talking about this case. Because what happened that night and what didn't happen might hold the key to everything. Now let's dive into what really went down in those crucial first hours, the part where this story starts to twist. Alright, so the search begins. Police arrive, neighbors join in, and soon, what was once a quiet family farm turns into a full-scale search zone. Dozens of people walking shoulder to shoulder, scanning every inch of the red dirt, every bush, every fence line. Helicopters hover overhead, dogs sniff through the dry fields, but hour after hour, nothing. And I mean nothing. Not a toy. Not a piece of clothing. Just one small footprint near the yard, that's it. You can imagine the confusion, right? I mean, kids leave trails, they trip, they drop things, they cry out, but in Gus's case, it's like he just vanished. And here, where people start asking questions that no one seems to want to answer. If Gus disappeared around 5 p.m., and the police weren't called until after 8, what was happening in those 3 hours? His grandmother said she searched the property first, alone. But think about that, you're out on a massive farm in open country, the sun's setting, and you don't call for help. Some say maybe she froze, shock can do that, others aren't so sure. Because the next morning, when officers started asking about family dynamics, things started to sound even more off. Turns out, Gus didn't live with his grandmother full-time. He lived with his parents, Josh and Jess Lamont, and the grandmother was just babysitting that weekend. Josh, the father, was over 100 kilometers away working when it happened. He rushed back as soon as he got the call, but by then, it was too late. The trail was cold. And the grandmother, she stayed calm. Too calm, some people said. She didn't cry, she didn't panic. She spoke to police like she was describing a lost wallet, not a missing grandchild. Now look, people handle trauma differently, we all know that. But in cases like this, every reaction, every delay, every inconsistency matters. And as police dug deeper, whispers started spreading through the town. Whispers about family tension, about secrets, about how maybe, just maybe, the story they were told wasn't the whole truth. Because what investigators started uncovering next would change the entire direction of this case. And it all starts with what they found and what they didn't find during that second day of searching. By the second day, police and volunteers had covered more than 50 square kilometers of land. They'd used drones, heat cameras, and even local trackers, people who'd lived their entire lives out there, reading the ground like a book. But the results, still nothing. Not a shoe. Not a scent trail. Not a piece of clothing snagged on a fence. It was as if Gus never set foot beyond that yard. That's when investigators started quietly wondering, was he ever outside at all? And that one question changed everything. Because suddenly, what started as a desperate search for a missing child turned into a quiet, careful investigation of the family itself. Neighbors were questioned again, timelines were rechecked. The grandmother's story about when she last saw Gus started to sound inconsistent. She said he was playing in the sand just before dinner. Then she said she'd gone inside for only a few minutes. But her phone records, they suggested she'd been texting and maybe even on a call during that exact time. And when police asked why it took 3 hours to call for help, her answers grew vaguer. She said she wanted to look herself first. But think about it, 3 hours in the middle of the Australian outback, alone at dusk. Even more strange, the single footprint they found didn't match the direction of the house or any logical escape route. It was just there, almost like it had been placed. Now, I'm not saying anyone staged anything, but the evidence or lack of it pushed investigators to consider it. And here, where things get emotionally heavy. Because if you've ever seen a family fall apart under pressure, accusations, guilt, silence, you know how quickly love turns into suspicion. The grandmother stopped talking publicly, the father refused interviews, and the mother, she begged people to stop making assumptions online. But still the rumors grew. And the police officially still call it a missing person case. No foul play proven, no suspects charged. Just one 4-year-old boy gone. And a family left haunted by 1,000 unanswered questions. The official search was called off after 5 days. But even now, people in that small town still say they sometimes hear a child's voice in the wind, echoing across the empty fields where Gus once played. Whether that's guilt or something else, no one really knows. You know, the hardest part about stories like this isn't just the mystery. It's the silence that follows. Because when a case like Gus Lamont's goes cold, the world moves on, but the family never does. Every birthday passes without candles. Every sunset reminds them of the one night everything changed. And still, somewhere out there, someone knows something. Maybe it's small, a memory, a sound, a detail they brushed off that day. But sometimes, it's those tiny things that break open the biggest secrets. There's a reason this case still keeps people awake. Because the facts don't line up neatly. Because there's no closure. Because deep down, we all want to believe a little boy couldn't just vanish into thin air. And yet no one has found a single trace. So what really happened to Gus Lamont? Was it a tragic accident in the wild? A hidden truth buried by fear and family tension? Or something darker, something we still haven't uncovered? One thing for sure, this story isn't over. If you found this story as haunting as I did, don't forget to subscribe, because next time we're diving into another real-life mystery that'll make you question everything you thought you knew. Follow Old Detective for more real-life mysteries they never solved.